Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MENA CX Breakroom, Infobip's monthly catch-up, where we take a step back from the usual presentations and have real conversations about what's happening in customer experience. I'm Johal, and it's great to have you with us for another episode. Last month, we explored the exciting world of agentic AI, where Infobip's platform is right now. Today, we're diving into some fresh insights. The 2026 Messaging Trends Report has just landed, drawing from Infobip's analysis of 628 billion mobile interactions around the world last year, and honestly, the findings caught us by surprise. I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic guests who can help us unpack what it all means. Firstly, Julian Dawkins, Infobip Principal Product Marketing Manager, who knows our Agent OS story inside and out. Welcome, Julian.
How you doing, man? Good to be here.
Good to have you. And alongside him, we have Zeid, Shubailat, Infobip Sales Director for MENA, who works closely with forward-thinking brands across the region and has a front row seat to these changes as they happen. Hey, Zeid.
Hey, Kim. How are you? Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining. We've got some really interesting ground to cover today, from RCS gaining momentum and email finding a new life to voice playing a surprisingly important role. Plus, we'll look at one of the regions where the messaging landscape is evolving at a remarkable speed. So let's get started. Gents, the report covers 3 very different regions. What's the single headline that surprised you the most?
For me, what sounds crazy is that the overall growth was still double digit, right? That was like 26% overall growth for the EMEA region, which I think on one hand is kind of as expected, right? The messaging trend is still growing. But when you couple that and you think about the overall messaging optimization, right? You speak to brands all the time and they say that they're optimizing messaging so that there's less back and forth. So overall, there should be like less interactions happening between a brand and the end user. But still, we're seeing this overall 26% growth. So that says to me that despite the optimization that's happening, you're still seeing sequential growth within the region, which really shouts out that messaging is like an unstoppable piece within the EMEA region, and it's on really healthy tracks right now.
Brilliant. And Zeid, what's your take on that?
Well, I'm really not surprised, just because when we've been looking at this, and it actually just cements all of our thoughts and our arguments in what's happening, and what's happening really out there is really it's I'm calling the digital transformation, but at the customer experience level. And the customers are actually interacting with this technology. So aimed and armed with also the newer innovations of what we're seeing within AI, everyone is paying more attention of saying, listen, we now have a different way of communicating with our customers, and not just to communicate with the customers, but actually driving a full conversation with our customers that was not seen before. So the entire customer experience is evolving and truly digitally transforming.
No, brilliant. Appreciate that, Zeid. I mean, the stats are astounding, right? Europe is up 44%, MENA is up 49%. Africa channel mix is shifting dramatically. What's the first thing that these numbers tell you about CX and where it is right now in EMEA?
As I said, it's all about now this digital transformation, and what we're seeing is that customers are paying more particular attention to the different ways they can actually go and communicate with their customers. The focus with that is to say, all right, what is the best channel? Or is it a combination of channels that we can use within there? And some of the newer projects that we're seeing by customers is seeing how they're unifying even their strategy of channels under one roof.
And Julian, what would you add to that?
I think that's showing that there's a maturity that's happening within the region right now. So like Zeid said, there was this whole conversation before about on-prem over to cloud before, and it was kind of like the back-end infrastructure kind of conversations that were happening. Now that's facilitated by brands realizing truly that they can have these full conversational journeys on messaging channels that kind of fit inside every part of the user journey. So it's no longer a could be or blue sky kind of thinking of what digital communications look like. It's more of like a practical thing right now. Like the infrastructure story has kind of been ticked off, and now it's moving into this, where can we apply these conversational journeys within our end user communications? And that's in part what's really helping drive these larger numbers.
No, that's great. Really appreciate the insights there, Julian. And that goes into sort of like the regional variations. I mean, if we start with Europe, RCS is up nearly 400%. What's the story there? Why is it all happening now?
So for me, I think that when Apple shipped the RCS support on iOS 18, that meant that even more users could have come on board with the whole RCS story, right? So you didn't just have like the Android players, you also had these like Apple like supporters, shall we say, that could now enter the zone. And for the majority of smartphone users within like Western Europe, especially, they were using that ecosystem, and therefore they could enter that. So I think that's really helped propel this RCS story, like you said, up like nearly 400%. Also, I think that operators in Western Europe, so like France, UK, they've been building out the infrastructure a little bit more as well to facilitate more of these messages as well. So I think in part it's like on the consumer side, that accessibility, especially for iOS users coming onto the RCS story and it being really synonymous for them to just start communicating with pals, peer-to-peer messages over the RCS channel, but also the story of the operators finally like coming on board and helping support the RCS story as well. That's really like helped push it to a much larger base of users.
Appreciate that. And if we look at MENA region, the Gulf markets has shown extraordinary digital acceleration. Zeid, from where you sit, what's driving that and how fast is it actually moving?
We're seeing really growth across the board, but certainly to add, the Gulf region, which have really focused on end customer type of services, as you see in UAE, and plus the investments that you're seeing that are in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and in Qatar, where they're really going with a very huge consumer approach. We're seeing obviously a lot more interaction that's happening there. People looking at this different types of customers that they're dealing with, so the different ages and the different generations, and then finding what is the right mode of communication that's happening with them. So a big shift that's going there.
No, definitely. And just as a follow-up question, if we look at like Turkey, Jordan, Kuwait, Iraq, Pakistan, they're all showing up in the data. Which of these are you watching most closely right now, and why would you be looking at those?
So here's the interesting thing. For us, every customer in every country really matters, right? And we have a strategy that spans across all of these countries. In certain places, we are very proud and happy about the partnership work that we're doing, as well as the investments in the partners that we call strategic partners. These strategic partners are independent software vendors, or ISVs, the system and integrators and platform providers. In every country and for every customer, whether we have a direct approach or a partnership approach or a hybrid, we're working closely with the partners, we ensure that we provide all of our services at the high level of quality that they're looking for. But saying that, I think it's important to point out, when we look at Turkey is not just we don't think of it as a country on its own. Turkey is regional and even international. So when we take a look at their retail outlets, they are all over the Middle East and in Asia and in Europe. And I want to go back even and talk about some of these, the shifts that are happening within all of them. So what we're seeing, a big shift from SMS, right, and into the more richer channels. So when we're talking about WhatsApp, right, and WhatsApp in the MENA region is one of the prime channels. And that's because of its capability, the capability of having a rich type of media, rich conversations, and back and forth type of conversations. So there's a big shift that's actually happening from SMS over to them. And all of these countries that we've talked about are demanding, and they want all of these items to happen. The capability also and the integration of WhatsApp as a channel into the different social media channels. Their click to WhatsApp capability that is integrated, whether you find it in Google or you find it in Instagram or in TikTok, right? All of those capabilities are the things that all of our customers are looking for. I don't want to just forget and not mention, there's a lot of investment that happened in applications. So the apps that have been developed. And right now, all the things that we're seeing are are all of these companies that are saying, well, these apps also now need to serve as a method of communication, and not just as a transactional component, but rather as the front end of getting us within there.
No, that's great, Zaid. It's interesting because I was at Gartner Symposium, and the MENA region are massively accelerating the adoption. So it definitely makes sense in terms of what you're saying there. Okay, another really interesting insight was the mix of channels within Africa is moving faster than almost anywhere else. Can you walk us through what the data is actually showing?
Yeah, I can take this one. Africa reminds me of like my son's best friend, like gifted, very talented, forward thinking, but just the grades at school just aren't there. Africa only grew 3% year on year, right, in terms of messaging. But when I say 3% and the rest of EMEA is growing at double digits, 26%, you're thinking it's way behind. But actually, there's two sides of the story. So in terms of that 3% growth, a lot of it has stemmed from the downfall of traditional channels, right? Like voice, for example. Yeah. So that's down overall, and also like SMS. So the bulk SMS campaigns that are traditional to African markets just aren't taking pace anymore. But then on the flip side, what you're seeing is an adoption of likes of WhatsApp, which is up over 20%, email, which is up over 100%. So what this is basically showing is that brands are ditching like the traditional route of like bulk SMS messages. And I think that's primarily because SMS had connotations of lack of trust. So there's a lot of like fraudulent activity that could happen over those kind of channels. And what African businesses are doing now, what the message trend report evidence is that they're going more towards this trust encapsulated journey approach, whereby they're going down rich channels like the adoption of WhatsApp, for example, to facilitate these conversational journeys. So yeah, no longer is it like an isolated SMS story for Africa. It's showing the rich divergence of different channels entering the ecosystem. What I'm also seeing is that they're leapfrogging the whole traditional approach as well, like the legacy infrastructure setup, especially within like the banking setup, right? They're facilitating conversational journeys that help with payments, help with e-commerce, help with shipping and logistics as well. So if anything, they're on par with other regions that are very advanced within the conversational realm. Africa have just absolutely leapfrogged that bit as well as a way to conduct business, which is really positive to see. So yeah, although it's only 3% growth year on year, what we're going to see in the years to come is the most amount of innovation and the heightened amount of growth coming from the Africa diaspora.
No, that's great. And, like you say, 3% of the misconception when you actually look at what the technology is doing. So brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Julian. Every region is telling us customers are on more channels. What does that mean for a brand trying to manage all of it, right? Because it creates more complexity.
For me, I think you're seeing that brands are finally realizing that you can't contain your customers in a single channel anymore. Like that story is done, right? It's fried because there's so much defiance from whoever it is that you're serving, whether it's students, public citizens, doctors, everyday consumers, whatever. They're not going to be satisfied if you're holding them to just a single channel. You have to provide them access at the point of contact. Otherwise, they're going to switch to a different vendor, right? And that barrier to a different vendor has elapsed now. So it's very easy to switch from one vendor to another for an end consumer than it was even 2 years ago, right? So I think brands have to, especially like the ones in the UK, for example, because they've been asked quite a lot from, if you look at the data, right? Lots of brands are being asked or demanded by the end users to sit across 6 or 7 concurrent channels. And those end users are expecting the context to be carried between those different channels as well, right? So I think what it means for brands is that they have to have a strategy for each, but an underlying strategy for all. And what I mean by that is, for example, RCS will act as our conversational platform, and we will have WhatsApp for support, for example. But all of them need to be grounded and utilized in trust, in brand consistency, in making sure that no matter what the ask is from the end user, we're able to satisfy that in a very functionable, quick way. So yeah, I think that the main thing there is that with all these customers asking for different channels and brands having to adhere by that, is that there shouldn't be no switching or repeating themselves. You said it yourself, Kim, Gartner, I had some research about that really. That's like the bane of people's lives. Like, why am I having to repeat myself time and time again over, just because it's on a different channel? It's great that brands are adhering to the different diversity that users want, but you have to make sure that it's not fragmented, make sure everything's nicely married up as well.
No, agreed. One size doesn't fit all, that's for sure. We want to talk about agentic AI, right? Agents are leading the way, and we've got to look at things in a different way. So, Julian, looking at the 3 region stories, does this data validate that Agent OS was built for, or does it change the conversation at all?
Yes, call me biased, but yes, I think that this validates the premise of what Agent OS is all about, right? Because as I just mentioned, we want to solve this fragmented communicational error or issue, shall we call it, that brands have been facing for a long while, right? They need to keep pace with their different demographics that they serve. And when Agent OS was conceived, if you like, it is in a world where customers, again, are moving across different channels in order to do specific tasks and do different things and maintain that context between different tasks. So we even looked at the data from last year, from the messaging data then and the years previous as well. And we projected that it was going to be more complicated to solve this for brands in an isolated way. So what Agent OS kind of does is that it steps in as one platform for businesses to solve issues, tasks for the end users without extensive development work. What it usually means is that, for businesses, if they were to go around it the traditional way, setting up new pathways, more logic to be added, numbers provisioned, complex journey orchestration to be handled, integration with back office tools, right? Where Agent OS comes in, and specifically for EMEA companies, is that it offers this channel agnostic orchestration. So brands don't have to be anchored on a single channel anymore. Because that's playing catch up. With this orchestration AI agentic platform, they're better positioned to meet the end users where they are, retain revenue where usually end users were abandoning the journeys, retain the context over the different channels so that human agents can be involved without the user having to repeat themselves, deploy accurate AI faster without the manual tweaking, and gain immediate access to the conversational channels without the additional hardwired development work in the background as well. So Agent OS is that operating platform to provide these conversational journeys, provide those communicational infrastructures to satisfy a whole host of use cases without the additional headache as well. So it's a one-point access for brands of enterprise, medium-sized profiles to enter this conversational era.
Perfect. Appreciate it, Julian. You just took 3 questions there in one, so that really gets us moving. Zeid, next question for you. When you're positioning Agent OS to customers in the Gulf, what's the argument that generally lands with them? What makes them see it as built for where they're going in their strategic direction?
The important thing is being customer focused on this and knowing what the customer is looking for. And what I'll tell you, there's a trend across all of our customers are looking for a way of expanding and investing into everything they've already invested in. A high degree of integration is one of the main requirements that we have. The second part is that they're looking for a unified analytics type of platform that enables them to see under one pane what is happening across all of the different communication channels and all of the communication and the processes that are happening with the backend. So CRM systems, ERP systems, and all the integration that goes with them is one of the critical requirements that they have. The other thing is that customers are looking, many of our large customers right now are looking to unify all the communication platforms under one roof. So bring all the communication channels and then make that available as a service to the rest of the departments. So then all of the departments, they come out, they say, okay, we want a way of communicating. And then they would have the entire set of tools on hand that allows them to say, oh, if I'm going to use this type of channel, whether it's email that's having a huge resurgent, I want to have a hyper-personalized approach to reaching my customer, then they want to tap into that as a service. They do not want to think of what channel do I use? Do I bring in a new channel to that? And that's the importance here of the platform that we bring in, is that it grows with any of the channels that are available now or maybe coming in the future.
And when we talk about agents, like for instance, the agentic approach, how does that tie in?
Customers are approaching it depending on the circumstance that you're looking at. But if you want to think of it, I think the commonly used term out there is right now is more of the digital twin. And what they see with the digital twin, to give an example, that they would have an agent that's a customer service agent. So there are different type of agents that are being developed that extend the capabilities of the people that are currently working within processes.
A big question that comes up a lot, right? Which is trust and compliance. We hear it in every region. How is that built into Agent OS rather than bolted on? Julian, I'll take your take on this, being close to it.
Yeah, I would say that from a customer angle, when we speak to customers, they want to make sure that they're safeguarding the end users, right? So they're reducing the amount of fraud exposure to the end users, also reducing the amount of hallucinations that they get as well. Right, so you want to have accurate responses. But overall, in terms of the infrastructure, all of the GDPR compliance, all of the baseline architecture, ISOs, etc., that's kind of like tick list. That's all there as well. We also have like network authentication APIs too. So SIM swap, number verification can be performed as well. One of the barriers that MENA customers were putting up quite a lot as well is when we're talking about agents that can carry out these tasks on the behalf of the organization so that they're not putting extensive effort and time behind it as well. So for example, KYC, know your customer agents, but in a conversational manner is what's been requested and we've been speaking to a lot of customers about. And these are the kind of trends we're seeing within the conversational space as well.
No, definitely.
These are possible because it's something that is so widely wanted, but also quite difficult to fine tune as well. So the conversations kind of moved away from like, do you have these accreditations? We have those, we tick those boxes, but it's moved into more, how can we leverage those credentials that you do have and the expertise you have within the space when it comes to security, infrastructure, etc., in order to better our business and safeguard those end users that we serve on a daily basis.
No, that's great. So what we're saying here is that we've got built in the guardrails to protect our customers based on the ecosystem that they're using with us, which is fantastic to hear. Let's move into the next question. So the trends report, we publish this every year. And this year, it's quite transformational. We're seeing a lot of different intelligence, different insights. And, someone comes in and they feel like they're quite far behind the journey, right? So what's the best advice you can give them as to how they can get started?
So as I mentioned, so many of our clients are already looking at unifying their channel strategy and under one roof. What's critical, though, for everyone else who's reading the report is really to understand that one size, again, as supporting what Julian said, does not fit all. So we have different generations communicate differently. And when you're looking for a solution for this, you do not want to be looking for a channel provider. That's not the correct approach. But what you want to look is for a platform that allows for a multi-channel or an omnichannel growth capability. One item that I think people should know is that the biggest misconception is that adding a channel has a linear relationship to costs. So the exact same cost of adding one channel to second channel, it just gives you, it's more like a linear cost, but it's actually not, because of the difficulties of doing this entire integration that's within there. So actually the costs exponentially grow if you try to add one channel at a time without having an overarching strategy for that. in this an omnichannel platform provider, such as what we're providing within Agent OS, which would be one of the ways of finding that solution. Where do they start? I think doing an inventory of their current channels, taking a look at the return on investment. Is it the same? Do they measure every channel and the return on investment of every channel in the same way? Do they have the same type of analytics across all of these channels? And from there, they start taking a look and putting in a strategy of how to unify all of these communications under one roof.
No, appreciate that, Zeid.
I always say to organizations, like, I don't care where you come from, like in terms of industry, it could be insurance, it could be automotive, could be travel, logistics, right? What you need to look at first is who is it that you serve primarily? Like, who are your end users? What do they consist of? Is it in a conversational way, many approaching you when they're in times of need? Where's my order? Or, I've had an accident. And then look at what it is in a category that you want to solve for them, like just primary one or two categories that you instantly want to solve for them. Is it, for example, getting them to refer your brand to a friend? Is it increasing the number of signups, whatever it might be? What is the action or behavior that you want to reinforce them to do? And I would say get a small focus group or like a cohort of users and test it out with them first. See what's working, what's not, and iterate from there. Because what you don't want to do is, I see so many times from customers, like having to think of first over the hill, first to be shot down, right? Like, I don't want to do it first. I want somebody similar in my industry to go first and they can take all the bullets. Like, it's not going to be me, right? I want to get lessons learned from them. But actually, if you do it with a small cohort of users first off, test, iterate, then release slowly, I find that pacing is so much better at seeing the worth of conversational AI and especially where Agent OS can work. And also you get direct feedback from your users as well. So instead of doing it in some kind of lab test conditions, you're getting real tangible insights from your users, and it opens you up to new metrics that you didn't even necessarily know about before, such as, containment rate, such as AI successful handling versus that of, typical maybe agents handling, for example. So yeah, I think really testing out with live cohorts can do a world of wonders when it comes to gearing your organization up into this conversational era.
No, perfect. I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much for sharing that, Julian. Right, gents, last question. So we work with a lot of organizations, and a lot of these organizations have many systems from CRM to contact centers. How does Agent OS work for these organizations? Are we looking to position we're replacing, or are we saying we integrate with these systems?
I say we don't replace. I would say we complement the existing setup. There's so many different wires in the background, right? You got ERP, CRM, CMS platform, all of these things that have been set up, not always in silo, but majority of the time in silos, doing its own thing. So instead of like trying to rework it, rewire it, I say we come in to complement them. Maybe you have a contact center system solution that's already performing, but you want some kind of additional communicational capabilities. Agent OS plugs into that without the heavy manual effort behind it. Right? So we're able to take things like documentation, connect via APIs, look at the SDKs, etc. We can sit on top of existing platforms, adding that communicational capability. That's my kind of quick take. But Zeid, I'm sure you've got much to add as well.
Yeah, as I mentioned, of one of the major requirements that we have is integration. CRM systems cost a lot. So the return on investment of this one is extremely important for every company. And really it becomes, the source of knowledge for companies about their customers. And this is not a system you would want to replace. And it's replacing that, first of all, would cost a great deal. So unless these systems are not working for you, then yes, one would go and say, maybe I need to replace it in order to have a CRM system that actually is working for them in the right way. And most of the time, it's actually about getting the system to work for you is to understand and use the system in the right way. Similarly, contact centers are also there, and contact centers really have been solving a couple of channels, mostly on the voice component of things. But now people want an extension of that, because one of the biggest projects that we see is that we've seen that there's just too much pressure on the contact center people, and they want to do call deflection. One of the major cases that we see within there, they want to increase the customer satisfaction rate, and waiting on a call was not solving that. So a number of banks worked with us on a solution that does exactly that. So what we do, and in the practical terms, we come in and we augment and we extend their systems, and we extend the lifetime, and we extend the investments that they already have in these systems, and providing it multiple new capabilities, these multiple channel capabilities, different conversational capabilities, AI-driven capabilities, and even building on some of the AI components that already exist within there. So we don't come in and tell them you have to use our AI implementation, although we have a great AI implementation, and we have something called the bring your own AI or bring your own LLM, and that just shows the level of sophistication, the level of integration that we're capable of doing, whether it's through native integrations or whether it's through integrations that would happen through partners or directly from our professional services business. Most of our customers are just elated about that, and it's really been a major contribution to our success.
No, brilliant. Appreciate that, gents. And don't get me started on MCP servers. We'll save that for another day. And that brings us to the end of episode 2 of the EMEA CX Breakroom. Julian, Zeid, thank you both for sharing your insights today. These are exactly the conversations we love having on the show. What strikes me is the trends report shows us how where we're heading with Agent OS and gives us the roadmap for getting there successfully. Every region has its own story, different channels, different adoption speeds, different priorities. But there's a common thread. We're moving beyond simply sending more messages to making every interaction truly matter. We'll see you next month for more insights. Follow along and let us know what you'd like to explore next. Thank you.